Council Candidates Forum on our natural and cultural environment. This forum is presented to you tonight by Pacifica's Environmental Family. I'm Cindy Abbott, and I have the pleasure of currently serving as the board president. Pacifica's Environmental Family promotes the discovery of and caring for our wealth of natural resources. One of the ways we achieve this is by providing nonprofit fiscal sponsorship to local projects that align with our mission. PEF and our projects help restore, protect, and beautify the environment, offer education on natural history, inspire stewardship and community, and with programs like tonight's, raise awareness of environmental issues. Our first candidates forum focusing on environmental concerns was held in 2012, and I greatly appreciate the consensus of the PEF board in agreeing to expand the view of this year's forum to include discussion of both our natural and cultural environment and the opportunities we have in Pacifica that can shape a vibrant and sustainable community. I'd like to introduce and thank our board members and PEF friends who are here and taking part in tonight's event. We have Ann Cooney serving as timekeeper, PEF board president Roy Ernst, who is in the back taking question cards, and PEF friend Karen Rosenstein doing the same. So if you have a question, please get a card from them and they will bring them up to me. We miss our PEF board members, Margaret Goodale and Jim Kramer, who were instrumental in deciding to host this forum. However, they're both out of town traveling. And we're grateful to be having the forum shown live on Pacific Coast Television, Channel 26 right now, and it will also be posted on their YouTube channel and at pacificcoast.tv. Our forum tonight will begin with 2-minute statements from each candidate, specifically sharing their vision for our city, including what role, if any, the natural environment, arts, and culture play in advancing that vision. We'll conclude with each wrapping up their thoughts in 3 minutes. In between, there will be a series of questions suggested and reviewed by local community organizations. After these questions, and for as long as time permits, I will pose the questions that you submit on new topics for the candidates and provide the opportunity for all to respond. Candidates will have up to 2 minutes to reply to all questions. As a reminder, the focus of this evening's forum is on our natural and cultural environment, and we request that candidate remarks and audience questions center on this perspective.
Sorry. Go up to the candlelight vigil in San Francisco.
We greatly appreciate everyone's input into this process, including members of our projects, the Pacifica Climate Committee, arts and culture organizations, and those of you that submit questions this evening. Again, cards and pencils are available from Roy and Karen in the back of the room, and they'll bring them up here. The candidates are seated on the dais and will be making their remarks based on a random drawing of names conducted earlier today. 2 candidates are unable to be here tonight. Mike O'Neill had a multiple-day meeting in Fresno, and Vicki Flores indicated she has a family commitment. As we begin this forum, please let us take this opportunity to thank and applaud the candidates for their interest in public service. As enthusiastic and energized citizens, I know that you will also be respectful and considerate of all opinions, and we ask that you hold your response and further applause or comments until the end of the forum. I'd now like to invite Sue Beckmeyer to share her 2-minute opening remarks on her vision for the city of Pacifica, including what role, if any, the natural environment, culture, and arts play in advancing her vision. Sue?
Thank you, and thank you very much for holding this forum tonight. For more than 25 years, I've lived and worked in Pacifica. I know the town well, and I have developed strong relationships through leadership positions with the Pacifica Library Foundation, Pacifica Lions Club, Rotary of Pacifica, and many school-based organizations. I've done fundraising for music programs in Pacifica for over 18 years, and was involved in raising nearly $500,000 to support programs in our elementary and high schools. I feel that the natural environment, arts, and culture is germane to the life of Pacifica. I know with our open space, we certainly have the greenest hills around. We have a natural environment that beckons people both as visitors and to live here. I would like to enhance that. I would like to grow our economy and be able to provide an even better life for the citizens and visitors to Pacifica. Thank you.
Hello.
Porter.
Hello, my name's Adonica Shaw Porter. There's a saying in politics that issues win elections. Well, I believe that vision wins communities. And my vision for Pacifica is expansive. Our environment and our open spaces are rich in history, and they are one of a kind, and I believe that they can be a source of tourism and revenue in the future if we market them correctly. I believe that the events at the Sanchez Art Center, our historical society, and our trails are major attractions to this city, and that there's so much to gain from even our millennials, teens, and our youth population if we are able to involve them and engage them in our success. Affordable housing, economic development, and the environment are my priorities, but I want to make sure that I do the best to reach everyone and to give representation to the people who have been overlooked here. I feel that arts goes far beyond paint on a canvas, and music goes far beyond notes on a scale. I strongly believe that the art is the soul of the city, and when we really consider what our artistic and our cultural heritage is, that ultimately comes from the people. I want to do more to draw from the hidden culture out there of our residents and to provide a platform for our immigrant and minority communities to be engaged in and to be represented in our efforts here on an artistic and cultural basis, as well as our LGBTQIA community. And I want to give them a platform to be seen and heard and to have their cultural and artistic accomplishments and achievements celebrated here. As a council member, I plan to advocate for things like a Pride Week, an inclusive myriad of cultural events like an international dance and music festival, and other opportunities to feature everyone in the community.
John Keener.
Hi, I'm John Keener. I'm an incumbent councilman and currently the mayor. I'm a fiscal moderate because Pacifica has no money to spare, and they have some new revenues coming online. We're going to tax Airbnbs as if they're hotels. We have a cannabis excise tax, a 6% excise tax that is, the first outlet has been approved. And further down the line, we can expect TOT tax from the Beach Boulevard Hotel. But all of that will be probably taken up with the PERS retirement. It's going up $800,000 a year, so $3,200 over 4 years. And salaries that we've recently negotiated or are in the process of negotiating, going up 2% a year. So that's my general vision for Pacifica. It's not much of a vision. It's really rather practical. On the environmental side, I'm a board member of Peninsula Clean Energy. I'm just going to go through these real quick and touch on them later. I'm an advocate for trails, the Coastal Trail at Portola Ohlone. I want to save our steelhead and other wildlife. And I support beach cleanups.
Bridget Duffy.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Thanks for having us. Thanks for coming, everybody. my vision for Pacifica is like my vision for America, and that is a restored republic where the people's will is what we see materializing before our eyes. This building is a beautiful old building. We, the city of Pacifica, own the building, own the property. There's been a plan in place trying to get attention, but failing, called the Pacifica's Ocean Discovery Center. Estimates say that we could probably grab about 20% of the people that normally make the trip down to Monterey Bay Aquarium. If we operated the facility as a public utility, which would totally be possible, especially since we already own the property, every citizen in Pacifica would benefit. Our taxes would go down. I see a restored beach. I do not see a seawall there. If we put a seawall up in front of this building, we will lose the beach, and that would be a terrible shame. I don't know why anybody would want to rent a hotel here to look over a wall that doesn't have a beach. So my vision for Pacifica is to take what we already own, take what we already have, and make it the best it can be. We could have food trucks in this courtyard every day. We could have little festivals once a week, Friday and Saturday night, mini fog fests. People love to come to our town. People love our beaches. People love our nature. We could easily capitalize on that. The problem is we're having to live a dream that somebody dreamed in last century. And I think we need to redream our dream for Pacifica.
And Mary, your vision for the city, including the role of the natural environment, culture, and arts?
Well, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Mary Beer. I'm a lifelong resident of Pacifica. I've gone to school here and worked here and worshiped here and volunteered and raised my daughter here in this beautiful city. You know, I love Pacifica, and I care very much about everybody in it. I grew up in Valleymar, so I have a special place in my heart for the Valleymar conservators and all the things that they've done to keep Valleymar beautiful. I was drawn to community work after an alcohol-related accident took the lives of 2 teenagers in the community. One of them was my nephew, Jonathan, which led me to my heart's work as the director for the Pacifica Prevention Partnership, which is a special program of Jefferson Union High School District. And through that, I worked to implement substance abuse prevention strategies across the county. I serve on the Park, Beach, and Recreation Commission, and I'm the coordinator for the Pacifica Collaborative. And through those positions, I've created affecting working relationships that connect people so we can share resources and enrich our community. I recently participated in a program through Urban Habitat where I was able to study land zoning and transportation and housing, and I learned that if we implement these things thoughtfully, that we can actually reduce our carbon footprint and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm excited about pursuing those things for our city. You know, Pacifica is just a very special place. You know, it's unique. We have our arts, and we have Pacifica Performances, and the Beach Coalition, and Spindrift, and the pier. You know, there's a huge community out there on that pier. And I think we have an opportunity to work together just to keep moving forward and create a beautiful Pacifica. So thanks for having me here tonight.
Thank you all for sharing your vision of Pacifica. Our first question. The City of Pacifica's Department of Public Works, with the support of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, is in the process of initiating the preparation of a bicycle and pedestrian master plan to update the existing plan that was last completed in 2001. How do you view the value of developing this master plan, and what would you do to make Pacifica more bicycle and pedestrian friendly? And this time we'll start with Adonica Shaw-Porter.
Okay, just want to make sure I get all of that in here. So I support a master plan, particularly because things have changed. I personally feel that having any plan in place gives not only the community and the residents that are living here now today a roadmap for what we can expect in the near future, but it gives our community that's going to come after us, the next generation of people that are coming up here. I've got 3 kids that I'm raising here in Pacifica, and it gives them an idea of what our foresight was, the things that we saw or thought that would be important to them, having them in that plan. So it's certainly something that I feel that we should advocate for and put into place, having something new and revitalized now. Now, in terms of advocating or putting something forth to make the community more bicycle-friendly and pedestrian-friendly, I think the first thing we need to do is fix the streets, the sidewalks. You know, it's wonderful if we have bike lanes, but horrible if we've got potholes that our bicyclists are falling into, or we don't have adequate turnout lanes for bicyclists to share the road with cars and people that are coming on the sides of them. I think in addition to that, in terms of the sidewalks that we have for our pedestrians, they do need to be revamped. I know that this community is already doing a number of things to make sure that they are more ADA friendly and to make sure that people can get on and off of the sidewalks quite easily. I have a 1-year-old, so it's something that I'm kind of concerned about because it's very hard to get a stroller up and down the sidewalk at times. So I do think that that's something that I would feel very strongly about in terms of pushing forth to make sure that our pedestrian ways and the ways that we have for our bicyclists are easy to use, easy to access, and that they are updated and friendly to all.
So one thing I think we need to do is, I mean, I'm in favor of a master plan, obviously. I don't think anybody would be opposed to that. But there are gaps in our pedestrian and bicycle paths. And so one major gap is just south of the city. But it's, you know, the coastal trail going up to Pedro Point. And the city actually owns the land for that. And, you know, it has to be, the trail has to be designed and built. And, you know, the price tag is going to be fairly high, so somebody else is going to have to pay for it, as usual. But that would get bicycles off that stretch of Highway 1 from, you know, the Lindemar Light up to the tunnel, which is just dangerous as all get out, and there's just nowhere for the bicycles to go. Another gap, and this is a gap for pedestrians, is at Fassler on the east side of Highway 1. There's no way to get from the Fassler Highway 1 intersection up to the bowling alley and the restaurant. And at least we can advocate for barriers just for that 100-yard stretch of you know, non-existent sidewalk, so that people, and primarily tourists, you know, coming from Rockaway, can make it over there safely.
So Bridget, your thoughts on developing a bicycle and pedestrian master plan and ways to make Pacifica more bicycle and pedestrian friendly?
I think that's a great plan, and I encourage pedestrians and bicyclists throughout Pacifica to get involved, because the city is asking for people to come, right, and sit in on some of the discussions. And because I think that the pedestrians and the bicyclists of Pacifica are going to have the best viewpoint as to how we should arrange our bicycle paths. And unfortunately, a lot of times there's a big gap between the ordinary citizen and what's going on in government. So I'd like to see that gap bridged, so to speak. I just wanted to mention one other thing about the environment. I think we have a great community that is concerned about the environment. our city happens to put all of its investment money into U.S. Bank, and I think they're looking into whether there's investment in fossil fuels, but I did hear that the U.S. Bank is the major funder for the what was the North Dakota Access Pipeline has become the Bayou Bridge Pipeline in Louisiana since Trump's inauguration. And so divesting from the fossil fuel industry really does mean sometimes divesting from the banking industry. And so I would love to see us seriously consider investing our investment money in really, really environmentally sound projects, smart projects, green projects that are going to take us into the future. I'm not against development. I'm just for smart development that's green and that is going to bring us into tomorrow.
Mary Beer.
Okay, so as a commissioner on Park, Beach, and Recreation Commission, we are all really excited about the BPAC, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. And personally, I love my bicycle and my scooter, and so I'm really excited about the prospects that this is going to bring. And not too long ago, a group of students that I work with did a walkability study from Oceana over to Mazzetti's, and it was really interesting the things that they found out and how that it wouldn't be possible for someone in a wheelchair to actually get from Oceana all the way over to Mazzetti's. And so as we move forward with all these plans, we can create complete streets. And if we have complete streets, then more people will be walking and riding their bicycles, and that means that we'll have less people in cars, and then we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It all goes together. So I'm really excited about it.
Thank you. And Sue Beckmeyer.
Well, I'm not a bicycle person. My husband is, however, and I think he would be laughing to hear me say how thrilled I am about this project. This was funded through CCAG, the City and County Association of Governments. It was funded in part through them, $55 million. The city paid for the rest of it. So we don't always have to have someone else pay for things. We can invest in our own future. And I'm very excited to know that we'll probably end up with a plan that will take us from the north end of town all the way to near the tunnel, that will tell us exactly where we can improve, where we can stack up our next infrastructure project and our next infrastructure project and our next infrastructure project. Because there need to be funds given to this town through the Transportation Authority to take care of the things that we need. We have to have a plan to be able to know what those are. I think that we can look at the Maury Point Trail as an example with the partnership and collaboration with GGNRA. We see so many people coming into town to hike that trail and to visit that area. And when Pacifica is on the map as a great place to come and bike, we'll see even more tourism coming in. This will help our economy because people will be looking to eat, do a little shopping, maybe get their bike repaired. So I'm really excited about this. I think it will support us well.
Thank you, Sue. Next question will start with John Keener. So John will have to listen closely here first. How to plan for sea level rise and an update to the Pacifica Local Coastal Program that guides land use development west of Highway 1 are works currently in progress by the city. As part of the discussion, the concept of managed or planned retreat has been raised. Managed retreat has created concern among some Pacificans and seems to mean different things to different people. Please specifically state what the term means to you, where it might need to be considered in Pacifica, and at what point.
Okay, I'm not going to answer that question directly, but I will say that I support protecting homes and businesses from bluff erosion and sea level rise. And beyond that, most armoring in Pacifica, public and private, was upgraded after the last El Nino. The exceptions are 2 city projects on Esplanade that are ongoing. We spent $18 million, but only $3 million is our own money. The rest was insurance and FEMA money, or it's FEMA cycled through Cal OES. So not armoring are, we've got the points, Maury Point and the point between Lindemar and Rockaway, and we've got Lindemar Beach and part of Rockaway Beach. The proposed policies for sea level rise in the local coastal plan, the actual language doesn't include any managed retreat. And it was written by a former executive director of the California Coastal Commission. It does include a mitigation fund, and that's paid by the protection projects in the rest of the city, and it will probably go mostly for sand replenishment to Lindemar Beach and that part of Rockaway that is the southern part of Rockaway Beach.
All right, Bridget.
Yeah, managed retreat, what it means to me. I went to several of the informationals about it. I've talked to the environmental scientists a couple of times about it. And from what I understand, a managed retreat would essentially kind of wait and see what the ocean is going to do, and individual by individual situation, figure out how to handle it. It seems to me the most logical way to proceed at this point, because we don't know what the ocean is going to do. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of scientific projections, but a lot of them don't add up to a flooding of this area. So it's what irritates me more than anything is that it is an important issue for Pacifica. We should decide as a city, do we want to keep trying to armor our beaches, or do we want to rethink our strategy as to where we set up? Now, to me, building new buildings in this area is the exact opposite of managed retreat. Building a seawall is the exact opposite of managed retreat. And the important subject of sea level rise and how we manage our beaches has literally been hijacked by the political jargoning of 2 different extreme groups, as far as I'm concerned. And this has been happening in America over and over again with our valuable resources, our money, our time. I think it's about time we really started insisting that our cities be more transparent in how they're behaving. We need citizen involvement and understanding as to how we proceed with our ocean.
Mary?
So I support the policies just as they are presented, and they focus on armoring and protecting our people, our property, our businesses, and the shoreline. But I also support a plan that includes managed retreat. And to me, managed retreat is exactly as it sounds. It's managing the retreat of our infrastructure if we absolutely have to do that. And if we don't have a plan in place, then we're going to be reacting in an emergency situation. So if we have a plan it covers everything, then at least we have somewhere to turn when and if the time comes and we have to retreat, then there'll be a plan in place to do that. I also feel that the community has been asking for more research and more time and other opinions, and I think it's a good idea for us to listen to them and to hear them. So I know as a city council member, I would do everything in my power to protect the people and the property of our city, and at the same time make sure that we have a plan in place in case we need to retreat. Thanks.
And Sue, what does managed retreat mean to you? Where might it need to be considered? And if so, when?
Well, I think that the plan that we're talking about, the coastal adaptations for taking sea level rise into consideration for our local coastal plan, is intended to give us long-range planning. And before we implement a plan that has a long-reaching impact, as this one will, I think we have to come to agreement about what the facts are and agree on the terms and agree on the data that we're looking at. I'm not seeing that happening right now. I'm hearing at the sea level rise meetings I've been to all kinds of different estimates. When I look at the plan itself, it's true in the latest iteration. It doesn't refer to the words managed retreat. But in the adaptation plans and strategies that back that up, all of the steps that are referred to describe the actions of managed retreat. So the homeowners who live in the area that would be most affected are very concerned. This is a big scare for them, and I don't think it's the role of the city to scare its citizens. I think that we can generally agree that sea level rise will not be something our city faces until after the local coastal plan's 30-year lifespan. So I believe that what we need to do is slow down and take the time to make sure that we have this plan right. I think we need to take the opportunity that all of the discussion has generated in this town and capitalize on that and get people talking. Thank you.
Okay, manage retreat, what is it? Honestly, it's exactly how it sounds. It's managing your retreat instead of doing something when there's an emergency situation. I don't think that anybody would argue that the sea level rise, or the sea level isn't rising. I think that that's a scientific fact. I don't know that we can argue on how much it's going to rise in the next 20 to 30 years. I do think that there's a lot of unknowns there. In terms of what we've seen happening at our local community meetings, I think what's been quite interesting to me is, despite the fact that there's a lot of scientific evidence, quite frankly, right now we don't have anything in our plan that discusses anything that property owners would have to do in the event that we put those two words in there. I think it's quite unfortunate because down south in Del Mar, there have actually been a lot of actions taken by the state to impose certain laws on them or restrictions on them in terms of being able to put up a wall or in terms of being able to manage their own economic development, where if they did not include it in their plan, that they would lose the right to do so. Over in Foster City, they faced a very similar issue, and quite frankly, I don't know that anybody's really interested in removing it if the state's going to step in, and we'd have to end up bonding ourselves out. I do hear people when they reach out to me and they ask whether or not they think it's time for us to put it in. I would advocate for holding it out for now. I do think that it should be included, but only after we have some type of a financial plan in place from our regional elected officials, our countywide supervisors, and even some input from the state. I think the bigger thing is, even if you put it in there, whether or not we want to agree or admit that there's going to be some kind of an impact to property owners here. I'm not saying that I dispute anybody on the science of it, but I do think that this is more of a regional issue, and I don't think it's fair to put such a large financial burden on people that are here. We are one town in a coast of many, and it should be treated as such.
Our next question will be beginning with Bridget Duffy. So here we go, and it's actually some information and then a question. According to the Columbia Law School Center for Climate Change and their 2013 report, quote, "Climate change is changing the way we live. No longer will the environment be a static condition. Rather, it will be variable, and it will make us plan for the future like never before. Fiscally, we're spending more and more to repair the damage. Long-term planning that accounts for climate change is needed to ensure that money spent today will reduce our future risk. We have the opportunity to not only build resilience today, but also prepare for the future, to build the infrastructure that will be the foundation for our cities in the next century. This will require innovation and new technologies, and it will also require tough decisions. The political obstacles to this strategy will be severe in many places, but the consideration of them should begin now. And again, that's from the Columbia Law School Center for Climate Change. If elected to City Council, what leadership skills do you possess to help the city and her citizens begin to prepare now for this uncertain future, and that will address infrastructure challenges in a way that is fiscally responsible?
Thank you for that quote. That's great. Absolutely. There's so many possibilities, and I think that this is why some new blood would be good on the City Council. There's a group that meets in Marin every year. It's called Bioneers. It's a group of scientists and environmentalists who get together, and they examine insects and birds and nature, and they say, how can we replicate what they're doing? And they're doing it. They're really coming up with some new innovations that are blowing the water off of all of our old ideas about water, about the use of land, creating eco climates is possible. And I think tapping into this new renaissance of thinking is vital. It's vital, and Pacifica is in such a fantastic position to make some bold moves, because there has been so much procrastination in Pacifica that our town has stayed relatively the same for maybe 3 or 4 decades. And because of that, we are kind of a blank slate. And we need to move our infrastructure because of the ocean, and we have old things in place that need replacing. Now would be the time to really look into what are some options, what are some new options that will take us into a future that is sustainable. Flushing all of our feces with drinking water is something that a lot of people are starting to look at with suspicion. Like, should we be doing that? So from garbage to waste products, a lot of things have to be rethought, and I'm doing that already. So I'm glad to be a part of this community.
So I think the city has a unique opportunity right now to really look at creating some infill development of mixed use, affordable housing, transit-oriented development, so we can get people to be able to live and then take transportation, really close together where they live and work and play. And so my point is that we have to get people out of their cars and into public transportation. I also think that the city needs to be accountable for implementing the strategies of the Climate Action Plan. The plan was designed to guide the response to the challenges of the climate change, and it's the responsibility of the council to assure the implementation and the evaluation of the plan. As far as my leadership skills, I'm currently participating in the Transportation Equity Allied Movement Coalition, which is Team C. It's a coalition of 28 diverse organizations that are working to create community-supported transportation solutions. And Team C has been present for the past year at meetings across the county and have been working closely with Samtrans to develop some core principles based on some transportation dollars that could be coming down the line rather soon. And so by participating in coalition models and creating relationships with Samtrans and other transit agencies across the region, then Pacifica can have a seat at the table and then can have at least some say in what happens to some of these funds, and then assure that transportation along the coastline is included.
Mm-hmm. And Sue, what leadership skills do you possess to help the city and her citizens begin to prepare now for an uncertain future, and that will address infrastructure challenges in a way that is fiscally responsible?
One of the skills that I have that I think could be very useful here is analysis. I think that one of the challenges we face is there, not unlike the sea level rise question, climate action plans are based on assumptions about global warming and changes in weather. And again, I think it's pretty accepted knowledge that that is going on. There's definitely changes in our climate, and we have to have responses to that. California is a leader, Pacifica is a leader with our climate action plan and our green building ordinance. We need to build upon that. Our citizens pushed for these things. Our citizens are actively involved in the commissions and the committees that made those things happen, so they're already engaged. I think that I have the skill to reach out to people and bring them to the table, or maybe bring them back to the table if they haven't been there for a while, to have it become a citywide discussion about how we can move forward. In terms of the fiscal challenges we'll face, I have an MBA. I'm going to be honest, it's not my favorite thing to look at finance stuff, but you have to do it to get that degree. So I'm very comfortable in comparing different proposals and that kind of thing. But the larger issue, I think, is for us to agree on the direction we want to go forward. Thank you.
Hi. So long before I lived in Pacifica, I was a weather woman. I got my break at Cron 4, and then I was a weather woman for the CBS Fox affiliate in Monterey, and I also did the weather for Santa Barbara. For me, this means, and in terms of leadership skills, it means that I have the ability to look at very high-level science and make it palatable for the community. I have a way of, I have the ability to look at things in a way that people will be able to understand and be able to communicate them in a fashion that people would be able to grasp and make their own decisions from. You know, certainly as somebody who would be on city council, I would want to make sure that at least if I were aware of some high-level science that could be broken down for folks, that I would take the ability to do that. And I feel like it gives me the opportunity to address climate change in a way that some of the other people that are vying for a seat on council do not possess. In terms of fiscal responsibility, I'm a county commissioner, and prior to that, when I lived in Southern California, I served on the board for the YMCA. I've also gone through a board training program with the Junior League when I was a junior leaguer down in Los Angeles as well. I can read a budget. Again, or to Sue's point, I'm not a huge fan of looking at a lot of financials, but it's something that I'm very much aware of how to do. It's something that I have a lot of experience in doing. And it also means that I have the ability, combined with my background in science, to discuss issues with people with differing opinions, bring those things to public light, make them palatable, bring conversations out into the open, and ultimately move any plan or plans that we'd have for this community to closure. Thank you.
Well, first of all, climate change is a global issue. Yeah, it is the increase in CO2 and other gases are driven primarily by coal plants and transportation and so on. And the effect that Pacifica will have on the global CO2 level is pretty minimal. Having said that, you know, we want to do our part in reducing our generation of greenhouse gases. One way we do that is by Peninsula Clean Energy. So it provides electricity that is 50 to 55% renewable and 80% greenhouse gas free right now. And that's way above what PG&E provides, and it's 5% cheaper. And so, you know, I'm on the board of Peninsula Clean Energy. I'm heavily involved in the power procurement contracts for renewable energy, solar and wind farms, and so on. Another thing I'd point out is that sea level rise, and particularly bluff erosion, is also a global problem, but it is very local. No other place has sort of the friable bluffs that we have. And I see the stop sign, so I'll stop. No?
Okay. So thank you. We'll come back to some questions on the environment that our audience has asked, but for now we're going to shift our focus to the arts and cultures. And why the arts? Many think of the oceans and hills when they think about Pacifica. Arts and a respect for our history and past cultures have also shaped our city. From the founding of the Art Guild of Pacifica City 60 years ago, to music programs in our schools, a castle on the hill, libraries, performing arts, theaters, a center for the arts, and a coastside museum. Arts, culture, and local heritage have created an outlet for our residents and pride in the community for many decades. What do you believe the role of City Council should be in developing and supporting Pacifica's arts, historical, and overall cultural environment? Mary.
Thank you for the question. So I think the City Council, the role of the City Council should be very active in developing and supporting the local arts and culture, and we have opportunity to do that right now, right this very minute, with the Ohlone Portola Heritage Trail. That project is connecting 90 miles worth of trails across San Mateo County, and it all ends up right here in Pacifica. And so as city leaders, we have the opportunity to promote this project and all the things that come along with it, because there's going to be like a 250th anniversary of the Portola expedition coming up next year, and we have an opportunity to promote our ecotourism that way. You know, I think that we also have the obligation and also the privilege to participate in all of the programs that we have across the city, including the programs at the Sanchez Art Center and Pacifica Performances. And also there's some projects coming up to do some public art along Palmetto, and that's really exciting. And I think as council members, we need to support all of those.
Beckmeyer.
What is the role of City Council in promoting arts, culture, and local heritage? I would propose that it is to be leaders in promoting these areas in our town. I think that Pacifica has so many different communities within one giant community. One culture that we haven't really touched on yet is surf culture, and I've seen that has branched into our Coastside Museum with displays there. We have the surfing contests that go on. There's a definite vibe of surfing in Pacifica. It's been here for a very long time and will always be part of Pacifica, and I think it's reflected in a lot of our visual and performing arts. I mentioned before my work with raising funds for music, and the reason that I got involved in doing that is because we're talking about City Council here, but at that time, the school board couldn't afford to allocate funds to make that happen. So parents and community members came together to make it happen. Rob Schneider was the one who started it with the Rob Schneider Music Foundation. That's one example of the kind of things that go on in this town every day. The Historical Society put an item on the ballot so we wouldn't knock down the Little Brown Church. And look what we have now. We have a museum. So I want to see City Council move forward in supporting all aspects of arts, culture, and local heritage.
Can you repeat the second part of the question? There was a lot.
I'll read the whole one. What do you believe the role of City Council should be in developing and supporting Pacifica's arts, historical, and overall cultural environment?
Okay. I personally think that when people think of City Council, they think that you walk into the council chambers and you come and you talk about things that are going on in your personal life. But I think the real role is for them to be leaders, not necessarily just with things that are going on in terms of policy, but in terms of being approachable people. Myself personally, I've got young kids that I'm raising here, and I would think that my role on council would be to consider how I would promote everything about the community, everything that my children should grow up understanding about the heritage here, everything that they should understand about either going down to surf on the beach, going over to the Little Brown Church, going to Sanchez Art Community, or the Art Center. I think that there's so much more to being on council than just passing bonds or putting things on a ballot. I do think that there's a much bigger role that we have the ability to play in doing so. In terms of myself personally, I've already started my own arts program. I'm the founder of the San Francisco Association for Scholarship in the Performing Arts. Over the last 10 years, my husband and I have funded thousands of dollars in scholarships to young performing artists, girls who are opera singers and those who do dance. It's something that's already very near and dear to my heart, and I see that as being a personal passion of mine that I would bring here to the community to continue to push forth for arts programs, particularly for the youth. Young women are certainly something I'm very passionate about, and the arts as well. I'd like to see a community symphony put into place. And if there's anything that I could do through my candidacy and even on my time in council to promote those things and the importance of them, I would certainly seek to do so.
Okay, so the Sanchez Art Center, the Spindrift Playhouse, and the Coastside Historical Museum, all of those are on city property. And all of those lease that at well below market rates. And, so Pacifica subsidizes the arts and history already, which I support. I think it's an inexpensive way to enrich our community. And we have a public mural program, coming along. We don't have too many public spaces for public murals. The private spaces have also been muralized, I suppose you'd say, rather nicely. I think that what we have already is a robust art and history scene, and let's keep it.
Hi. Yep, we have a robust art and history scene, and I agree with that, and it's wonderful that the city supports that. My mother is an artist. She worked as a street artist up at Fisherman's Wharf when she was younger. And I'm an artist, and I have a sister who's an artist. And we have enjoyed living in the Bay Area and being artists. One of the things that have driven more artists out of the Bay Area than anything else is the rent increases. We lived back in a world where artists could survive if they were willing to be, poor, which we were. But that is not possible anymore in Pacifica, in San Mateo County, in San Francisco. And it's changing our culture in not a good way. So I would love to see the city, since it already owns so much land, to put some housing, some tiny home communities, an artist community, a senior student community. I mean, we can really start to look into making spaces for people who cannot necessarily afford to live here anymore, and allow them to continue to contribute to this community, and which I think the artists in this community have made this place a very, very special place. I would like to say, since I have a little bit more time, I tried to get on the beautification committee. I've tried to get on a few committees. It's hard to get on a committee in Pacifica, and I think that's one of the things that I'd like to see change most. There's a mural out here I don't particularly care for the mural. I don't know why it was approved. I sat in on listened to a man's idea of what he wanted to put in those little cubbies, and it was a beautiful scene of the ocean prior to man showing up, so that you could see this beautiful scene of an ocean through all those little cubbies. Now that would have been beautiful, wouldn't it have? We need more public involvement.
Mary Beer. Started? Oh, that's right, you started. I'm so sorry. So we're going to come back over to, I was listening so intently. We'll come back over to start now with Sue Beckmeyer on a similar vein. What are your thoughts on how Pacifica overall can develop arts, culture, and historic activities to bring in more economic benefit to the community?
I think we need to get our word out better. I think this would involve working with the chamber and expanding the program that they already do with the travel writers. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that, but occasionally I hear from friends who go, I heard an ad about Pacifica on the radio. And, you know, it says to come down and spend the weekend. And I'm going, yeah, that's exactly what that program's supposed to do. So getting more people aware of what we have here, of the gem that Pacifica is, so that they'll come and spend a weekend here. I mean, if you live in the valley and it's super hot in the summer, maybe coming here for the weekend would be appealing. I have friends that own 2 condos in Mammoth Lakes, and we've had the pleasure of being hosted by them. That was for skiing, but over time, Mammoth has developed a number of art festivals and different programming that they do throughout the year, so that the condos that would sit empty most of the year in the past are now utilized, and it's a vibrant community. There are a lot of people coming in, spending funds, and then going home, and it helps to improve the community for those who live here all the time.
Thank you.
Okay, so I know I mentioned it a little bit before, but I would certainly plan or advocate for different festivals here in the community that were art and dance focused. I absolutely love going to a lot of the dance festivals that happen in San Francisco. I would love it if they were a lot more local. One thing that I really like about certain parts of Oakland and even in San Francisco is the fact that they've got like an art walk. I would love to see something like that here in Pacifica, where at least once a week, maybe on a Thursday evening between 4 and 8 p.m., where you can frequent different areas around town, look at the art, stop, have a drink, eat something with your family. But it would be something that would be ongoing. Some places could have music, but either way, it's the opportunity to fellowship with people that are here in the community. In addition to that, I think it's it's something that I'd really plan to push for in terms of tapping into communities that are not as engaged in a lot of what we see happening down in the lower half of the community. I live in the back of the valley. I would love to see and encourage more of the minority communities to come out to show off their work and to be included in the art scene. That might mean bringing in a certain docent program for the schools that would focus on art and history from certain Asian, Indian, African American, and Hispanic time periods. I'd love to do something where we are a lot more inclusive of a lot of the voices that are not necessarily heard from here, but that should be celebrated and that our children could value and understand and maybe even advocate for at some point in the future. Thank you.
So I think the publicity for Sanchez, Spindrift, and the Coastside Museum, for instance, could possibly be improved. And certainly the signage from Highway 1. So Highway 1 is the way that everybody goes through town, whether they're residents or not. And there is a sign that says Sanchez Art Center, but that's about it. And you know, you have to be looking at exactly the right time to see it. There isn't one for Spindrift, I don't think. And Spindrift would be really hard for somebody from out of town to find. Sanchez, fairly difficult also. So signage could be improved. The Coastside Museum is, almost on the freeway. So I don't know that there's that much advantage there. And that's about it for me, the parts that the city itself could do.
Okay, Richard Duffy.
Thank you for everything that everybody said. It's hard to disagree with any of it. Thank you, Adonica, especially for bringing in that diversity aspect to the community. I'm drawing a blank. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
What are your thoughts on how Pacifica can develop arts, cultural, and historic activities to bring more economic benefit to the community?
Yes, I don't know why this can happen now. We don't have any barriers other than I would like to find out what is keeping people from allowing food trucks, Rockaway Beach, Sharp Park Beach. We have visitors numbering in the, I think, over 200,000 visitors from just over the hill that come to walk their dogs or just get some fresh air at the ocean. But there's nothing for them when they get there. There's not even a guy selling hot dogs. And I don't understand why, because it's an industry waiting to happen. I don't know if somebody's blocking that from happening. I would like to find out. That's one of the reasons why I'm running for city council, is because I see that there are a lot of blockages. There's just things should be happening here that just aren't happening. And I am just that type of person that I learn as I go, and I would like to find out what is blocking us in Pacifica from being a more prosperous and friendly town. I don't know, but I'd like to find out, and I definitely think we could have a festival once a week at least. The Fog Fest was so fun. I don't want to wait another year to dance in the streets. Does anybody else? I'm telling you, it's time to get firm with our government. We have to party.
And Mary Beer.
Okay, so I think highlighting the history and the story of Pacifica is really, really important. And we can do it online through media and marketing and bringing more eyes to the city. We can highlight so many different things through blogs and podcasts and video. There's our fishing community. We can highlight them, and we can highlight things that are going on at the Sanchez Adobe. And again, I'll talk about the Ohlone Portola Heritage Trail Project. We can highlight all of these things to bring more people into our city, to spend, time and money here. We can create a destination, a place of destination, rather than just a pass-through, to Half Moon Bay or to Santa Cruz. I was also thinking, the part of the highway that comes down right through Manor, it would be really nice to work with Caltrans to maybe do some kind of public art there. It's so gray and just not inviting at all. And I do agree with what has been said here about the signage. If we had beautiful signs pointing the way to the beach and the way to the pier, I think that would be very helpful. And then there's programs like through our schools. At one time there was a program at Oceana called Because Art Matters, and they haven't done it in a couple years. Bringing programs back like that and really supporting our young artists and our youth would be very helpful.
Thank you. This one we'll start with Adonica. It's our last question on arts and culture from the list here, and it's a little personal. What ways do you today currently connect with and support cultural, creative, and artistic assets in Pacifica?
Can you repeat it?
What ways do you currently connect with and support cultural, creative, and artistic assets in Pacifica? What do you love to do with the arts today?
Well, For now, I'm actually in the process of joining the Historical Society. Since my background is in marketing and PR, I've decided that I'm going to be taking on the wonderful role of managing the newsletter and making sure that it gets out to the community. I feel that that's a wonderful place for me to start, to leverage my background and my expertise in a way that I think the community can benefit. I plan to make things a lot more social media friendly. You guys might be getting social media ads from the Historical Society, but that's how I'm currently working with that program. Thank you.
Well, I bought a couple paintings a few weeks ago. Small ones, just little ones, but by, I would say, well-known Pacifica artists, at least ones whose paintings I like to look at. And I bought them at Sanchez Art Center. I'm saying all this because Cindy knows, but, you know, I haven't been as regular as I would like to be going to the Sanchez Art Center. I do love it. I really like to look at art. And the problem is that as a city councilman, an awful lot of your evenings are spoken for. And so it really becomes a tough decision to say, okay, I'm going to, you know, pry one more out and go to this art opening and so on like that. Yeah, personally, I will try to do better on that score. And the other thing is personally, if I'm reelected, you know, I will continue the subsidies that Pacifica currently grants to Sanchez and Spindrift and the Historical Society.
I love our art scene here in Pacifica. I just enjoyed the 50/50 show. You might be familiar with that. Some great artists have come through town. Bands at the Sanchez Art Center. There's so many good things. I try to enjoy as much as I can. I'm a member of the Historical Society. I try to show up at things when I can. I am proud of Pacifica for its just commitment to culture and art and history. It's one of the things that truly makes Pacifica a great place to live. So thank you for your contribution and for the city's contribution. It's really been remarkable to watch.
Mary Beer, what do you do for fun and art?
I go to paint night at the library. It is the best thing. What a great way to like decompress throughout the campaign. They've had so many paint nights. I think I have 3 pictures hanging in my living room that I've created, and it's so much fun, and it just feels good. And there's a community there, so you get to know the people who are attending. It's so wonderful. There's also like music at the Chit Chat, and you can make jewelry with Jan Michaels over there in Eureka Square, and I'm also the liaison for Park Beach and Recreation Commission for the Ohlone Portola Trail Heritage Trail. If you couldn't tell, I'm really excited about that project. I participated in the castle tours. That is really great. And I'm also doing some interactive projects with the young people that I work with. They're creating digital stories, and they're telling their stories about resiliency and immigration and substance abuse, and it's a really awesome way for them to go out and show who they are to younger students and share their stories so that they can connect. So we have high school students connecting with our elementary school youth through digital stories. So there's just so much to do here. Thanks.
Wow, in lots of ways. How do I connect with and support culture and creative and performing arts in Pacifica? My husband John and I are members of Pacifica Performances and love to go to shows there. Don't get to very often, but hoping to make, I hope I haven't missed it, Led Ka Pana. I routinely volunteer for fundraisers for music programs. I'm a member of the Moose. My husband is as well. And the Moose Lodge, I can't tell you, 20 times a year at least, gives the use of its space to groups to raise funds for their own programs. The band program at Terra Nova has had a number of very lucrative fundraisers there. I'm the president of the Pacifica Lions Club, and we were fortunate enough to have the funds to donate to both Terra Nova Band and more recently to the Pacifica School District Middle School program to replace uniforms for students. That's a tremendous expense, and that I know personally after 8 years of being on the band boosters, when you are trying to raise money just to run your program, you cannot raise $50,000 more to buy uniforms. So having the support of the community for that kind of thing is immense. I'm a big advocate of PCT. I'm pushing people there all the time and telling them what is available, and the digital storytelling, hook them up. These are the things that we do personally, and we will continue to do. We love this community in that way. Thank you.
Great. So John, we're going to start with this one with you, and these are now questions from the audience, and so we're going to bounce around on a few topics, and I'm going to combine two questions here somewhat into one. Lindamar Bay is polluted. There are now signs up warning people. What would you do about it? And related to clean water, Millwood Ranch is in violation of clean water rules and has been fined by the city. The pollution continues. What would you do?
Okay, Lindamar Beach first. And there really isn't enough time to answer this, but the pollution on Lindamar Beach is almost entirely coming from San Pedro Creek. And the reason it's polluted is it serves as the storm sewer for Lindamar, for 15,000 people, 15,000 plus. And, it's probably, well, dog waste certainly contributes. I mean, if you think about it, if everybody picks up after their dogs and only 1% of the dog waste, escapes getting picked up, that's still an awful lot of dog waste, and it goes into the creek. The same with sewer laterals. They're gradually getting replaced, and I think that the city is making progress on that part of it. So it's a long-term thing to reduce the pollution on the beach and in the creek. But I'm committed to it, and I'm working with a lot of folks that are also committed to it. With respect to Millwood Ranch, I believe they have not been fined by the city yet. They may be. It's owned by Millard Tong, who's basically a bad actor, and it's difficult. There's a lot of RVs out there that have folks living in them, and he's renting them out to people, and so my time's up, and maybe I'll come back and address this some more on another question.
Yeah, I'd have to see exactly what's polluting the water, but feces has become a big problem in our city because of the homelessness, and even just the whole idea of putting our dog waste in a plastic bag and then those plastic bags get left. I mean, we have a lot of problems, but what I would do, and it's a bold move, but I feel like a lot of cities need to start doing this. We need to start banning chemicals, chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides. We know there's no question about the scientific facts about the chemicals that are coming down out of, people's yards and homes into our waterways and into the ocean, and it's killing things. It's changing the way they mate. It's causing shells not to develop on shellfish. We have a big problem, and we need to address it, and there are solutions. We can get off of the chemicals. There are solutions. The big problem with the chemicals is that the chemical companies, basically the fossil fuel industry, doesn't want big cities like a whole city like Pacifica to say no more petrochemicals, because if everybody did that, obviously they'd be in a lot of trouble. They actually make a lot more money off of their chemicals than they do off of the fuel right now. So the chemicals that we're voluntarily purchasing and voluntarily using are doing a lot of damage. And I think that if people were more aware of what the effect of these chemicals are on our creeks and our oceans, they might be more apt to not use them or to look for some alternatives. It's hard for a city to go right to a ban, but sometimes that's what needs to happen. And we're looking at a situation on planet Earth that is a desperate situation. There was a huge die-off of tiger sharks in the bay. We have to do something. We have to make some bold moves.
Mary, your thoughts on clean water in the bay?
So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in this, but I do know how to bring people together. And I've been doing work across the county for a long time now, and which includes working with people from the San Mateo County Environmental Health Department. And I think we have an opportunity here to bring people together to have the conversations, to come up with and look at the research. We can have a study session, right? And then try to understand exactly what's going on, and then bring people in to help us learn how to deal with it. I think the collaborative approach is always a good one, and we can bring folks in who actually can bring solutions into our city.
Could you repeat the beginning about Lindemar Bay?
Lindemar Bay is polluted. There are now signs up warning people. What would you do about it?
Yes. Well, there's a number of things that need to be done. I think John alluded to or stated that a big reason why Lindemar Bay is polluted is because of sewer laterals. And I live in Lower Lindemar. My house was one of those houses that had Orangeburg pipe. And I was able to avail myself of the city's program that has various funding over time. I don't know if it's currently funded, but when one elects to repair their sewer lateral, not waiting till the time of sale, but goes ahead and elects to do it, they can put in for a $1,000 rebate. And it was, something our neighbors and we went in together and we got a good deal. What I would do about it is I would do everything short of require the city to come up with some kind of incentive program for lots of other people to do that very same thing. When we're working on major pipes as a city, we should be expanding the program and reaching out to neighbors. Van Ocampos described a program where you can get a really good deal because the city has already pre-negotiated those rates. So it's something we need to really, really emphasize and not just wait until the point of sale, because we don't sell our homes that often in Pacifica. This would get it done sooner.
So in terms of Lindemar Bay, I think that we need to have a pollution rehab program. And I think that it should have some type of an incentive for local homeowners to get certain testing done to their home and make certain improvements that would kind of relieve some of the issues that we're seeing here. I think that the pollution rehab program should also have some type of milestones for the community to test that water on a more frequent basis to make sure that we are tracking against some type of standard. Simply putting up the signs doesn't necessarily indicate that we're working towards an issue. It just simply means that there are now signs that are warning us. If we want to get those signs down, there needs to be some type of a plan to track the health of the water and anything that might be in it or surviving in it. In terms of Millwood Ranch, to my knowledge, they have not been fined. I know that there are a lot of RVs there. I am a county commissioner on the Healthcare for the Homeless and Farm Workers Board, so certainly the RV issue is something that I'm very much aware of. Something that I have advocated for throughout my campaign is to have social housing here in Pacifica. I think part of the issue that we are up against is that we don't really have anywhere for our homeless population to go. It doesn't appear that they're going to be going to local churches, but at the very least, if we have some type of a social housing program to get them off of the streets and into a place where they had a roof over their head and plumbing, it would alleviate some of these other pollution issues that we are seeing as a byproduct of the homeless program that we have going on here. Additionally, it would kind of help track us towards some type of a progress with getting those communities off of the streets as well. Thanks.
Okay, so our next one, we'll start with Bridget, and I'm going to again combine several questions, and you can answer the pieces of it that you want to respond to. Transportation related. Bringing more people into Pacifica may require addressing the traffic problem. How might this best be approached? And tying into that is a question of providing opportunities to get people out of cars and using public transit helps preserve the environment. Samtrans has proposed a limited stop hourly route from Daly City, Barton, Half Moon Bay, if they can fund it. Do you think we should do that? And how would you work with our sister cities on the coast to get more public transportation and Samtrans funding?
I would have to look at the numbers and stuff with I'm sorry, is it trans?
Samtrans.
Samtrans, I keep getting that mixed up. Obviously, we need to start thinking about transportation in a different way. And these big, huge lumbering buses with 2 people on them in an inefficient system doesn't seem to be working for me, for our city. And I think it's because our city is very unique. We have one corridor, and people want to get up to the BART. So to me, it would be the most efficient would be to devise something that could get people up to the BART. I have a Skyway dream that seems far-fetched, but when I mentioned it to somebody that was from Europe, she said, oh, a city in Europe did that. They literally, like the New York City subway is under the ground, they literally put their transportation up above the ground. And it's a fun idea because you would be traveling around, and anyway, I won't get into that. That's just one of my fantasies, that we would rethink being on the ground all the time. I read a book, it was called The Fifth Sacred Thing. It's an incredibly good book, and I recommend it to everybody. It's about a future in the Bay Area, and that's where I got the idea. They use gondolas to get around San Francisco. I would love to see people get out of their cars and bike. But one of the things that I think that would fix the transportation problem better than anything else is if people lived close to where they worked, and if every school in Pacifica was the best school that could be in Pacifica, and that children didn't have to go out of their neighborhood. It would save a lot of traffic. It's a very simple suggestion, but...
Mary, your thoughts on transportation, getting people out of their cars, addressing the problem, and public transportation?
So I think I'll start with traffic. I know that a lot of the traffic in the morning is school-based, and then I think if we could kind of revisit how we look at neighborhood schools, maybe we could get some more young people actually walking to school and taking the bus to school. Maybe some school-based transportation programs would be very helpful for that. And like I already mentioned before, I am currently working with the Transportation Equity Allied Movement Coalition, and so working regionally to bring in transportation dollars to our city. It's very important. And so there is a ballot measure coming up in November. It is by no means a perfect measure, but it is a beginning to kind of take a look at the things that can happen through transportation dollars. And there are some core principles in the measure. The reduction of vehicle miles traveled, incentivized transit and bicycle and pedestrian and rideshare options. I think through working through this coalition, what I have learned is that we have to start somewhere. And so by having relationships with Samtrans, I think that's the best place to start. Wait, can I say one more thing?
Your time's not up.
The time's not up. Okay, good. So as people have been displaced, ridership has been displaced. So in order to up the ridership on public transportation, we actually have to have housing available, transit-oriented, affordable housing, so that people who actually ride the bus can live here and ride the bus.
I agree with that. Transportation-related opportunities to get people out of their cars. I would wholeheartedly support a Daly City BART to Half Moon Bay shuttle. I think it's absolutely essential. In the schools, I work for the school district, full disclosure. So I happen to know a lot about it, but I'm also a little defensive when it comes up. In regard to the schools cause all the traffic. Our school district, our enrollment has declined very significantly over time, not for the least of which reasons we've been discussing in terms of cost of housing, et cetera. But I want to say that there is work being done with a program called Safe Routes to School. It's a grant-funded program through a partnership with the Transportation Authority, I think, and the County Office of Ed. And so there's inroads being made with students. It takes time to educate students and families. The more that we can improve our biking paths, the more we can ride to school, even schools that aren't right in our neighborhood, because for many, many families, the school they go to is not in their neighborhood. We used to have 15 schools. We have 6. Our town is the same size that it ever was. People are spread out. And so the notion that, we need to make every school in Pacifica the best school it can be, I'm here to tell you they already are. They are the best schools they can be, and people are drawn to them and want to go. We are a district of choice, so people want to go to Ocean Shore School when they live in Lindemar. It's their choice to do that. People want to send their child to IBL middle school because it's a purpose-built middle school, and not necessarily go to Cabrillo, where I work, which is a K-8 school. So it's an issue that we need to address, but it isn't something that the schools are going to be able to shoulder completely.
So transportation, I have a few ideas. The first would be to issue or to cap the number of cars that we have going to the high schools. When I was in high school, the only way to get a parking permit to even bring a car to campus meant that you had to have a GPA over a certain, like 3.0 or whatever. I live on Terra Nova, and I have to tell you, it's terrible in the morning when I'm trying to get my kids out to school. One goes to Valimar, one goes to Cabrillo. And between trying to get them out the door and dealing with the traffic that's coming down the street, parking all the way up the street, it creates an additional traffic jam in the back of the valley and some of those back streets. I think the community could advocate for more spare the air days, where we encourage local businesses to have their employees walk or take some type of an alternative transportation method to their job. I am a fan of the program or the opportunity that's proposed from Samtrans, but I would be more for a green shuttle that particularly just went to BART, maybe to Saramonte, and through parts of Pacifica. I think going all the way down to Half Moon Bay is going to make that route even longer, and I think it needs to be very efficient. In terms of what I would do to get it to fruition would be to work with local elected officials over here in Daly City, and then also on a countywide basis to see if there's a way to support funding for 1 or 2 shuttles, as well as for the employee salary that it would require to operate those shuttles on a more frequent basis for people that live throughout the community.
So I'm not going to tell you that the traffic problem is going to get better and that the Samtrans is going to be the answer to anything, because it's not. What they've done, what they propose to do anyway, is add one express bus to BART, one route in the morning and one in the evening, in addition to something like the 3 that they already have in the morning and the evening. And they're going to extend it from Colma BART to Daly City BART. With regard to Half Moon Bay, I think they're going to add one run down to Half Moon Bay. That's a separate route. And this is all part of the half-cent sales tax that is on the ballot in November. I think, the traffic problem may get better in the future when we have self-driving cars, and particularly small self-driving buses. And if those buses could be operated by private companies rather than Samtrans, which is just horrible, there's some possibilities there. A self-driving bus that can go around the neighborhood, and make 3 or 4 different stops, like a van, make 3 or 4 different stops, and then take off to their destination, wherever it may be, over the hill or in San Francisco or whatever. That technology is 5 or 10 years down the line. Until then, I think we're just stuck.
We're going to have 2 more questions from the audience here. And again, I'm combining some. And we're on a culture topic. Do you support a new library, the proposed 2-library model, and possible bond vote in 2019? Mary?
Absolutely, yes, I do. I do support that. Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm excited about all of the ideas that are coming forth about how Sanchez Library can be upgraded into a self-serving library, and the space around it can be used to support city projects and city programs. So I absolutely support it.
Sue?
I support the new library project. I'm very excited about the idea of having a 2-library model, and I think that the community has done a great job in coming up with alternatives to what was proposed when I led the campaign to build 1 library. That was largely based on efficiency and the idea of being able to offer more services to our community with longer hours and being open 7 days a week. It became evident pretty quickly to me in that election that the community is more interested in having access and having more places to go to than having it more frequently with more bells and whistles. So I think that it's the right size for Pacifica. It's the right thing for Pacifica. With regard to a bond vote in 2019, I think we would have to just look at that and do the normal processes of figuring out if there's enough community support to make that a viable thing to go forward. There's no doubt there will need to be a bond vote at some point in time. There's no way our city would be able to afford to undertake a library project, even a scaled down one, without the support of the voters. So it better be a project that the voters want and are excited about. And I think it is. The self-service model that's been described, combined with additional staff partnering with Parks, Beaches, and Recreation in that space at Sanchez, I think will make a really, really beneficial community resource. Thank you.
I absolutely support it. I'm somebody who initially was really in favor of 1 library, but after speaking to so many people in the community and understanding the dynamic of the types of opportunities that there would be to have two libraries, I was able to consider it from a different perspective. And so I'm very much in support of this. I like the fact that there's a self-service model in place, that we have the ability to do it without wondering how we're going to take on the additional employees and how they're going to be paid a living wage. In terms of a bond, I don't know where the community will be a year from now. I think that that might take some more time for me to evaluate in the next year, to see where we are in terms of the health of our community, what things happen within the next year. Certainly, I'm not against bonds, but I do think that there's a lot to consider, particularly with the increase in our PERS bill that's going to happen within the next year, and I think that that really does need to be a priority. Thanks.
Yes, I support the new library now that it's a two-library model. And the ideas for Sanchez, they're great. But I think we need, I would like to see that sort of rolled out immediately or fairly soon before we have the bond issue. Because, you know, to give patrons of the Sanchez Library a chance to see, yes, it's really going to be great, it's going to work well, and so on. So I don't know whether we'll be ready to go for a bond in 2019. I would think we would certainly be ready in 2020, if not 2019. And I would support it.
Bridget.
Hi. This is going to make me sound mean. I don't support a new library in Pacifica. I'm actually a person who uses the library, and there is a small group of people in Pacifica that actually use the library, and I'm happy with our libraries. And the people that I've talked to when I visit the library to use the library, I ask them if they're happy with the libraries, and they are actually happy with the libraries as well. Asking Pacificans to take a tax bond out for $80, $90 million for a library, to me, is beyond my understanding. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that, but if children are in this town are going to be paying back a bond of that size, I do believe they should be asked, do you want a library? Or would you like us to put the money into an oceanic discovery center? Everybody I've talked to in Pacifica gets really, really excited about the idea of Pacifica investing some money in an ocean discovery center right here, with a research lab, a citizen research lab. We have Skyline College is just making a new building, an environmental science building. The research lab at the Oceanic Discovery Center could work with the Skyline College. We would restore the pipe that used to take sewage out to the ocean. We would restore the pipe and bring ocean water into the Oceanic Discovery Center. We could start a desalination experiment and probably come up with some pretty good ideas in the next 5 to 10 years about how to desalinate the ocean and address a real serious problem in California, which is fresh water. So.
Okay, and with that segue, our last set of questions here relates to the Pacific Ocean Discovery Center. And we will be starting this one with Sue. Do you believe that a well-planned Pacifica Ocean Discovery Center can bring substantial tourist revenue to Pacifica? Do you believe that a Pacific Ocean Discovery Center could be a useful tool in educating our own and neighboring communities about the effects of climate change? And finally, short of investing any community funds, how can the city facilitate this addition to our town?
Could you repeat the middle part? Useful tool for education about?
Educating our own and neighboring communities about the effects of climate change.
Okay, I think a well-planned, well-funded Ocean Discovery Center could bring some visitors to Pacifica. I think a great deal of work would need to be done to determine where it fits within the market. We have NOAA funding a center in Santa Cruz for $25 million recently. We have the Monterey Bay Aquarium. We have a NOAA installation up at the formerly known as Romberg-Tiburon Center in Marin, which is affiliated with San Francisco State, where I used to work. And I need to have an understanding of where this would fit within those opportunities. I think the other thing that is important in any kind of proposed endeavor is to know what the funding plan is, what the business model is, and how it will be implemented. Would it be a useful tool for education about the effects of climate change? I think there's an opportunity for something like that in Pacifica. I'm not sure the Ocean Discovery Center is the right thing for that, but I do think there's a need for that. I would go a little further and say, I think we have a need for a study on water and the use of water and sea level rise and that sort of thing. I think we're right in the middle of it, and it's that people's awareness is heightened and they want to know more. So I think there's that, and I forgot what the last part was.
Short of investing community funds, how can the city facilitate this project?
Find somebody who has $30 million.
So, do I think that it's something that could bring in visitors? Yes and no. I think it's certainly an amazing opportunity. I think that would be available to people who are already visiting Pacifica. I, however, am very pro-research. I work for an agency for the state that works with researchers and scientists, certainly not in terms of ocean discovery, but I would think that it would be a great opportunity to bring some world-class researchers here to talk about things that are happening here in Pacifica, to give them the opportunity to engage in our coastline and see if there might be an opportunity for them to give us some of what it is that they've come up with, some of their studies, and allow people that are working on the city council to look at what their research has found. I do think it can be a very useful tool to educating the community here. Like I just said, I think that I would be very pro-research, and I think that there's a unique opportunity there. I do not see this as a bond-funded opportunity, though. I do think it's something that should be privately or community-funded. I would be open to maybe starting it out on a GoFundMe or something very similar. There have been a number of projects around the United States in the last few years, everything from bus stops to landmarks around different communities that have been community funded or at least supported in the plan for them initially through that type of an avenue. But I do think it's something that would be a benefit to have here. It's just I don't think that we should take public funds to do it.
So the hotel project that is that we have an RFQ and an RFP out for right now that will be placed here where we sit contains some language that will allow the Pacific Ocean Discovery Center. And the way it will allow it is that if a developer, a hotel developer, hooks up with the folks that are promoting the Ocean Discovery Center and sees a way to incorporate that into his or her design, then the city will consider that as one of the proposals and evaluate it by the criteria that have been developed. And unfortunately, the most important criteria is money. And so if the Ocean Discovery Center takes away too much space from the hotel and the hotel can't make as much money overall, then that would be a negative for it. So that will be decided really by the private sector, at least on this site. I've heard proposals that that maybe it could go in the quarry. That seems to be the catch-all for anything that the city wants but can't pay for right now. So I'll leave it there.
Well, tearing down these buildings and putting a 4-story hotel here adjacent to a possibly rising sea is just, I cannot comprehend that intelligent people with educations and eyes would think that that's a good idea. The Oceanic Discovery Center could be an amazing research center, and it would refurbish these buildings, basically. It would up-purpose these buildings, and these buildings have been standing for so long, there's no toxicity left in them. But to build a brand-new building with all the toxic materials that people use to build buildings these days would be a danger to the ocean. And our developer friends have said they don't mind. They don't mind taking the hit. They don't mind possibly having to tear down these buildings so that they don't go into the ocean. But twice now, landlords have bailed on the city of Pacifica, and twice now the city of Pacifica has had to take down buildings so that they would not wind up in the ocean with the toxic materials that they are made out of. So to build a new building here is just pure insanity as far as I'm concerned. The Oceanic Discovery Center could be operated as a public utility. We own this land, 4.5 acres. We own these buildings. The revenue is estimated to be around $20 million a year. And these are scientific figures that people have been working on and are estimating. So in my opinion, it would be a wise move for Pacifica to divest from the fossil fuel industry, take out some of the money that we let U.S. Bank play with every year in their support of the fossil fuel industry, and support this project here, which could be a life changer, not only for Pacifica, but for the world, because the world is looking for answers right now.
And Mary, to wrap up.
Okay. So I'll start with the revenue question and if it will bring in visitors. And I think if it is really well marketed, if there's media and marketing associated with it, that it could bring in visitors and revenue, especially if it's connected with the hotel project. I also think there's opportunities to connect with other projects and institutions like the universities in our area to bring in, like Adonica mentioned, the research component, because I think that's actually really important. And yeah, that's what I have to say on that one.
All right. Thank you for answering all of these questions. Your wrap-up, and we will start with Adonica Shaw-Porter.
Okay, so for those of you that are still here, thank you so much for coming and to listening to all of our perspectives. Everybody that's watching on the television, thank you so much for taking the time to get to know who we are. I'm here because I believe in representation. I believe that it's very important for people, irrespective of if you're old or young, rich, poor, black, white, homeowner or not, to be very engaged with our community and into making it a much better place. I would love to serve this city in a way that I think could be very beneficial to working class families. My husband and I have been here for a little over 3 years together, but he and his family are from here. They've been here for more than 40. So I'm certainly quite aware of everything that has happened here over the last several decades, and it's something that I felt that I wanted to get involved in and to provide an amazing opportunity for my kids to experience something that would be very unique to their generation. And I felt that it was, I guess, part of my duty and my calling, whether as a mother or as a leader, to step forward and to build that world for them. I know the responsibility of protecting our community, and I know that there's this great and incredible opportunity for anybody who steps into these roles towards the end of the year here to serve the community. And I just want everybody to know that irrespective of if you believe in or agree with all of my positions on things, that I'm happy and open to talking to you. If there's anything that I've said here this evening that you would love to educate me on, if there's something that I've overlooked, I am more than happy to meet with you or to address your concerns via email or on Facebook. I want to let everybody know here as well that, you know, I myself am somebody who is very privileged to work in a government agency, very privileged to be on a commission, and I see this as an opportunity to not necessarily just engage in the community and to serve all of you, but to also leverage those resources and those relationships that I do have over the hill, as we're calling it, and at the regional level and even the state level to make things better for everybody here in Pacifica. Thank you.
So once again, I would emphasize that I'm a fiscal moderate, and that's, you know, that's because the city of Pacifica really has no money to spare. It's all spoken for. So anything extra, we're going to have to find funding for, and we can. There are grants out there for all sorts of things, but bear that in mind. I want to protect homes and businesses from bluff erosion and sea level rise. I want to preserve our environment, parks, beaches, trails, steelhead, and other wildlife. We have the only steelhead run between the Golden Gate and Half Moon Bay. And so that is another reason, in addition to the surfers and, you know, kids playing in the Lindemar Bay, why we should attempt to clean up the beach and, by extension, clean up San Pedro Creek. I would like to repave arterial streets. That is a little off topic tonight, but and we don't have much money for that, but we'll have a little bit more. And I would say that that I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club, strongly endorsed, and that's all I have. Thank you.
I'm doing this, I don't have anybody endorsing me. I don't have anybody contributing to my campaign. I'm doing this as my civic duty and my civic right as a woman in 2018 in America, where I'm expected to pay the same taxes as a man. I'm expected to pay the same rent and mortgage and interest rates as a man, but I do not have representation in government, and that is painfully obvious at this point. And I don't have representation here in Pacifica. I'm a renter, I'm a woman, I'm a low-paid worker, an unpaid worker, and a cannabis enthusiast. And I'm very, very concerned that the city of Pacifica is not addressing my needs. And so that's why I'm here. I'm running for city council because I feel like I deserve a voice in government. People like me deserve a voice in government. We are taxpayers, we are hardworking, we are law-abiding, and we deserve a voice. So please vote for me, especially if you don't like somebody on one of the other teams.
Hi, Mary Beer.
So I want to thank the Pacifica Environmental Family for having us here tonight. I want to thank all of my co-candidates here. I've learned something every single time that I sit up here with all of you, and I really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the culture and the arts and the beauty of our city. It's a relief to move on to topics like this, and it felt really good for me to sit up here and talk about that tonight. You know, I've lived here forever, and I love this city, and I believe that we have spent so much time in the city, especially in the past couple years, being completely divided, and I don't think that that's a place where we can make sustainable, effective change. I think we have an opportunity to come together even if we disagree, but to come together and sit at the same table and discuss how we can move the city forward. You know, I believe in supporting community services that help people stay in their homes. I believe that we need more affordable housing. I think we need transit-oriented development. I believe in so very much. Mostly, I believe in the people of Pacifica, and that is what I'm here to do, is to serve you. So thanks again for having me here tonight.
25 years ago, my husband and I moved to this community. We began to raise our family, and our two sons, John, who's 25, and Robbie, who's 20, were educated in Pacifica Public Schools. And with their education, I like to say, began my education about Pacifica. I became involved in the PTO at Lindemar School when my son was in kindergarten, and I had a baby. And I pushed that baby in a baby stroller down the street because the sidewalk was obstructed by cars, there were no curb cuts, and I thought, what? Really? We need curb cuts. Why aren't there curb cuts? And I was all about wheeled mobility, and we need to make this. And as I became involved in different organizations in town, I began to understand better the processes of government and why things don't get done and how funding works and how hard it is to get an entire community focused around the same idea, like a library. And yet there's a will here for so many projects. There's so many interests, and I'm good at bringing that together. I'm good at connecting people. And I've been volunteering in town for such a long time that I just know a lot of people, which is useful, very helpful. The thing that I'm super proud about is that I've been endorsed by State Senator Jerry Hill, Assembly Member Kevin Mullen, and County Supervisor Don Horsley, as well as former mayors Mary Ann Nyhart, Karen Irvin, Len Stone, and Jenny Jaquith, as well as our entire Pacifica School Board and most of our Jefferson High School Board. And I feel that that is a vote of confidence that, coupled with my skills and abilities, I think that my experience as a leader in Pacifica has prepared me to take this next step. And as a Pacifica City Council member, I'll work for you. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Okay. Let's thank all the candidates again for their time. Each of you for your interest in the community. As mentioned earlier, our city is defined by the oceans and hills. When choosing a name for our city over 60 years ago, Coastside was a close runner-up in the vote. The name Pacifica, though, was chosen. Pacifica was the theme statue for the 1939 Golden Gate International Exposition, representing world peace, neighborliness, and the power of a unified Pacific coast. As we continue through the election season and beyond, may we recognize that each of us wants the best for the city of Pacifica. May we move forward with respectful neighborliness and kindness. Peace. Good night.